Hi, welcome to the Stitch TV show. I'm Lynn.
And I'm Pam. We're happy you're joining us today. The Stitch is an online quilting talk show, the perfect soundtrack for your sewing room. Join us for twice monthly talk shows, virtual stitch-ins, celebrity interviews, and podcasts. Learn more at thestitchtvshow.com.
Our show is brought to you today by QT Fabrics, and we have In Deep Ship. In Deep
There's a
Ship.
P on the end.
Yes,
yes.
ship.
So this is one of their new fabric lines, which delights me.
So cute.
To no end. Yeah.
I love it.
Octopi, mermaids, funny sayings. It's everything you could want in a fabric line. Also, it has orange.
I know.
To Lynn's delight.
Already...
And a lot of blue. That's my jam.
Yes, but the orange stands out because there's a lot of blue.
Yes. So
there
awesome.
You go.
Thank you, QT.
Yes, QT Fabrics. Thank you. So today we're going to be talking about borders and adding embellishment to your quilts. We're joined by Mike the Sound Mechanics Quilt.
He's right there.
Music for my heart and
He's
soul.
waving, guys.
This quilt was actually made by my mother-in-law, and I got to quilt it. And it's got a lot of really unique embellishments on it, which is why we chose it for the show.
Yeah, so when we say it's Mike's quilt, he didn't make it.
No.
But he owns it.
It was gifted to him, and he hangs it in a place of prominence in his office. So,
cool.
Yeah. Anyway.
So.
What's been up?
Yeah. Yes. All of the things have been up. So, as we film this, it's January.
It is January.
And we got through New Year's.
We did.
And, yeah, hadn't slowed down since.
You've been traveling with work and stuff, so
yeah.
You've been busy.
My day job sent me to Boston, where it was warmer than it was in Atlanta.
Right.
And I flew up there the night before a big storm hit, both down here and up there, and it was laughable. Frankly, got up there and I was ready. I had like my long wool coat that I haven't worn in years down here, a scarf and a hat, and I bought some boots because I didn't have any like real snow appropriate. Because the hotel I stayed at's about half a mile from the office I was going to, and I was like, I'm gonna walk like a proper grown-up Yankee.
No.
And I wore those boots, and my feet were so sweaty because I did the rookie move and didn't take a change of shoes with me. And I wondered, like, why does everyone have shoes at their desk? Like, literally just, it was like a shoe store / office. Like, what's up with this? I'm like, oh, so they don't have sweaty feet. I had sweaty feet. The next day I wore regular boots. But yeah, like 2 inches and it all melted on contact up there and down here. School canceled for 3 days.
Yes, it was.
It
was canceled. It was cold.
We don't know how to handle it.
So I have, last month we talked about, the last show, we actually talked about how I did not ever need 16 embroidered napkins. And I have a confession.
Now you have how many?
I embroidered 24 napkins. And because when you buy them, they come in 12s. So I just did 24. Because I'm having a party this weekend. And I did some cocktail napkins. So I did 22 of those only because I screwed up 2 of them beyond repair. So 2 people cannot have cocktails. And really, they're
I'll
just
double up on theirs.
Yeah, they're just beverages. So, yeah. So I now have 24 embroidered napkins. When I said last month, why would I need 16? Well, you invite a bunch of people over for dinner, and there you go. So my husband thought it was quite crazy.
Well, you are.
I know. There's issues there.
Hey, did you hear the news?
About?
Ken Burns has a big old quilt collection.
I saw that.
I know. I saw it on your Facebook wall. I was like, oh, that's a good topic. Put that in there. But yeah, documentary filmmaker, has done a lot of quality documentaries.
Oh, he does my favorite documentaries. He really does. He did one on Civil War. He did one on it's just
some historical thing.
The historical thing that has to do with gangsters in the 20s.
Mafia?
No, not the mafia, but yes, it was the rise of the Prohibition.
There you go.
I got there. Prohibition was excellent. It was really good. He's done World War II. He's done the Civil War. I like all of his stuff. It's really good. So, yes, he has quilts. Yay, Ken Burns. We'll be happy to voice over any quilt documentary you need to do.
I'm so happy to ask you what your 3 favorite foods are.
Yes, exactly. We should interview. We'll try.
Yeah.
I'll interview. I'll contact him. Seriously.
It's on her list. Someone add it to the spreadsheet, please.
I will totally call up Kid Birds.
Hey, girl.
Hey, girl.
All right. So, first topic.
Borders.
If Lynn could make a quilt of all borders, she would.
I have, I think.
It's like just one.
That's
little
really
thing in
a
the
center
middle.
medallion quilt and borders.
Yeah. I think the You Spin Me Right Round quilt is like all borders. There's
It
like
really
a 6-inch
is.
square, and then it's just all borders.
All borders. So, how do you feel about borders? I don't know how I feel. How do you feel about borders?
You know, I find they have their proper place. It's so refreshing, though, when you do a quilt without borders and you get the center together and you're like, I'm done.
I'm done.
I'm done.
And that was my first point, is not all quilts need them. There are some quilts that they just need
The framing.
Yeah. They don't need a border at all. So, traditionally double wedding ring quilts didn't have borders. And then there are some quilts like, I did a tumbler quilt. Sometimes those don't need borders.
Yeah, I've been doing a clamshell quilt.
Log
no
cabin
border.
quilts a lot of times don't need borders. And so not every quilt needs one.
Well, and particularly the modern aesthetic. It's a trend away from borders because it's much more about more traditional
Yeah, I agree.
twist on traditional blocks. And in that twist, it's like, oh, well, I'm not going to add borders to this. And it's...
Yeah, I agree.
Because I think they're presented more from a lot of the more prominent ones, like Heather Jones and what she makes. I don't think there's a border on any of her quilts that I've seen that have won awards.
Yeah, I started to say.
I'm sure maybe some of her early ones have, but when they're presented more as modern art pieces.
Yeah, a lot of them don't have borders.
Yeah.
But you know what I like? I like when borders are unexpected. And what I mean by that is, like, there's only two, or there's only they're uneven. Like, there's just a border on the top and bottom and not on the sides. Or I like that. Or one of our patterns that you did, the borders, the Belinda, the borders on the corner. And actually, a pattern that I've got coming out, I did the same thing. Although I think it's got like 7 borders.
There's a lot of borders.
It does have a lot
but
of
not
borders.
7 full borders.
Right. Some of them are just partial to the side.
It's like 3 and 4 halves. Yeah. Or something.
It works. It totally works. We haven't got shipped the fabric. That's why we haven't shared it yet. But yeah, I think that some don't need borders. Now, do you have like a rule of thumb where if you're putting borders on a quilt, right? How wide do you make them?
Okay, so it depends, of course.
Of course, it depends.
I will say traditionally, when I'm doing a traditional layout, or when I'm doing a lot of layouts I do that are made of 9-inch blocks from my scrap stash.
Yep.
I am sashing them. But the sashing ends up to be 1.5 inches because I start with a 2-inch strip.
Right.
And I continue that sashing as part of, which I guess makes it part of the center. So that sashing continues out as first border to me, but part of the center. Typically in that case, then I just add, if the blocks are 9 inches, I'll do a 6-inch border around it.
Why 6 inches?
Because it is divisible by the same number as 9, which is 3.
Okay.
If I just have, sampler, or like, here's whatever, blocks have gone into the middle, lots of times the first border, like right next to the center, is a skinnier one that's got a good contrast to it.
That's very common. And I think that a lot of people do that. Is the first inner border
is like a frame it up.
It's a frame it up, and it's a smaller border. It's a 2-inch or smaller kind of border.
Yeah.
And I think that's really common.
And then like a 6 or an 8. Again, if the blocks were 12 inches, then it might be an 8-inch border, because to me it
depends on the print.
I don't have the math spelled out. It's more like a...
This looks good?
Yeah.
I've heard people say like it's a percentage. Like if you have a 9-inch block, it needs to be 1/3 of that, or it needs to be 2/3 of that.
Now there's
something, so you look at the size of the block and then determine how big the borders are according to, and it's a percentage of the size, like a third or 2/3 of the size.
Yeah. Now there's a magic border sizing tool. I think it's on a website. Someone sent us the link. We'll put a link to that in the show notes for you guys can go play with it. And I think it lets you say, oh, 12-inch blocks, and what does this look like?
Yeah.
Now I will also say,
I know where you're going because I do this.
I don't know
bad.
if you're doing this. So I love on an outside border if it's a single piece of fabric, but it's a print. So it looks like there's more work put into it. Because, because the fabric does the work. And then what's really nice if you cut it out for a 9-inch border and you do all your quilting, and then you get the dreaded like wibble wobble on the edge because of just uneven tension. And I find that more because of how I base. Maybe on a long arm, it's not quite so prominent.
I don't know. You can still get wavy borders. There are
you
still
can
very
still,
friendly borders out there.
You can still chop off 1/2 inch and it still look good. Just to like neaten up that
It depends
edge.
on if you're doing custom quilting though. Because if you're doing custom quilting, you've quilted to that edge and you chop off and you've got a wavy border.
I'm not usually custom quilting that outer border though.
Yeah, oh,
unless
I
it's
do.
pieced.
I definitely custom quilt.
But you're fancy.
Yeah.
I ain't got time for that.
Yeah. I definitely custom.
Yeah. I would say a lot of I don't do a lot of pieced outer borders for the simple fact that I have this fear of like, oh, I have points on this thing.
Right.
Like the Bonnie Hunter scrap quilts, they all have piece borders for the most part.
Yeah.
And
gorgeous,
I inevitably chop off a good 75% of those points. Like, good luck with that. With the binding. So yeah, that's why I don't do a lot of piece borders.
For me, it's like also the print. So if it's a big print and I want to include this motif and not chop it off, like if it's, I don't know, I always feel bad if you cut off kids' heads or
faces.
In
fabric, also in real life. Good rule of thumb.
Don't cut off kitty cats' tails and stuff like that. I always feel weird about that. So I think I look at how wide the fabric is. Now, here's a question. Do you piece your borders?
So I prefer to cut them along the length of the fabric instead of by width of fabric. That way, that is the more stable grain. It's not as stretchy. Thus, I also don't have to piece it, but you have to buy like 3 yards to do that.
Right.
Which is why if you get a 3-yard length, and the quilt that will show up in the next show, you'll see this. Cut it along the length. I cut 8.5 inches times 4, which is 4 borders.
And sometimes.
So that gets you to 33 inches, and that left me enough to cut all of the binding from the same fabric.
So if you do 8.5, that gives you enough for all the binding, and you cut your binding 2 1/8.
2 1/8.
Is it still enough for 2 1/4?
I think so, because I still had like a good inch and a half left.
Okay.
I just cut it so I wasn't including where the fold on the fabric was.
Okay. That's good to know. Because, like, I think, if you do a 10-inch border, you're out of fabric.
Yeah.
I mean, you can do it.
But like an 8, 8.5, you can.
But yeah, 8 and 8.5, you could probably do that. That makes sense. Oh, that's a good idea. I have to admit, okay, so when I'm designing, like, have you ever taken borders off?
On purpose?
Well, yeah. Well, all right. So I made this quilt, and I put in the border was a argyle pattern, and I was trying to. It was a.
This sounds like a nightmare already.
It was a print. It was an argyle print.
Oh, okay. I thought you pieced an argyle, and I'm like,
I would love
that's staying in there forever.
Not cutting that out. No, it was an argyle print, and I didn't have enough, so I pieced it.
Ooh,
no. It was bad. I took it off and then mitered the corners because it was so you could not handle.
Okay, so what I usually do in that case,
my gosh, it was so bad. So stripes and that kind of stuff.
So if I am only able to cut with the fabric and it is a print, like a graphic print, like an argyle or a stripe or whatever.
Yeah.
My tip. I put cornerstones in of a contrast fabric, and sometimes, depending on how big it is, I will even put in like, I guess the equivalent of a keystone in the center. So you only need like a 30, got your...
that would have been good.
Yeah. And that way you're not having to match print, but you have like a nice little contrast, and then it's a design choice.
Yes. Then people think,
oh, she meant to do that.
Yeah. I took a picture of it, and I was like, because I always take pictures as I'm going along. That's a really good tip, just to see, because it gets you back further away from the quilt and lets you look at it. Does this look good? And I was like, I can't not see that. Like the whole time I'm looking at the corners where it was like met, where I'd pieced it. So I went back to the store and bought the 3 yards. And thank God they still had some.
Yeah.
Because it was not a new
that.
print.
There was a crying from the bathroom.
Yes, it was not.
I'm back at the store.
But you know what else I do with border? Because I do love borders. And we design on EQ8. So when I'm designing a quilt, I have to be really careful because there's this little button that says add another border. Okay.
I need to block that button on her computer.
But what you have to do is you keep adding borders and it's like, oh crap, this is a king size quilt, 120 by 120. You're like, it doesn't need to be that big. So I have found challenged that the look that I want may not be.
Then you end up with a 10-inch center.
Yeah, you would end up with this. And I do that with not just, I mean, the borders definitely increase it. I'll design the center and I'll look at it and go, okay, this center looks good. And then I start adding the borders and all of a sudden I'm at a king size quilt. And I'm like, oh, crud. So I either have to shorten the borders or take away some of my blocks or just that part.
I will say, as much as I love EQ8, I find it frustrating that you can add all these fancy borders and they don't provide cutting instructions or when you go to add a fancy border. So the Nope quilt has this kind of double diamond border.
Yeah, it's really cool.
And like, sweet, let's add that. And to get the ratio correct, to get that diamond an actual square instead of like a weird, elongated diamond was maddening. Because I finally figured out, like, okay, well, I can do a 5-inch wide. And as long as my center finishes at a multiple of 5 inches and I make it a 5-inch wide diamond border, like that math works. But otherwise it's like skewed or weird, or there's fancy borders they don't give you piecing instructions
I'll tell you how I do that.
Okay.
So what I do is I put the last border on.
Live learning.
Yeah, I put the last border on and then I choose the setting where it says by blocks. And then I make the block of that border.
Okay, so you create a block then.
I create a block
to look like that.
To look like whatever I want it to look like. And then I know how to make that block.
Okay.
And that's how I do it. And then I just create the block in reasonable. So I'm always looking at the center going, okay, this is divisible by 3. I can have a 6-inch border, 6-inch blocks.
Gotcha.
And then that's how I figured it out.
Okay.
There you go.
Pro tip.
Use the block one and the borders. But yeah. Borders don't have to be even. I don't like even borders. Like a lot of my quilts are off center or not.
On purpose.
On purpose.
Not oops, forgot to put the piece of fabric on.
Sometimes they're oops because it's like, oh, we ran out of something. I'm really bad about, you're much better at this than I am. I'm bad about starting a quilt and then getting halfway through piecing and going, I don't have enough fabric because I didn't figure out. So, I even had to make an emergency run to the quilt store this week and go look for some fabric, and they didn't have it. And so, I chose another fabric that looked close and then had to reshuffle some things so it looked like I meant to use 2 fabrics, and I didn't. And, yeah, I'm bad at that. But I wrap, here's my justification.
Keeping small businesses alive, that's her justification.
No. I mean, yes, but no.
Yes, and.
The way I store my fat quarters, which should have been enough, I didn't realize that there was some cut out of it because I wrap them back up.
Oh, yeah.
And then you pull it out and you go, oh, this is perfect. And you think it's enough because it's wrapped on your little fat quarter thing. And then it's not.
It's
a real fat quarter-ish. Because you've cut 4 inches off one side that you didn't see. And
Yeah,
you
I do
needed
that too.
those 4 inches. And...
But I will say the reason I think that I'm better about that is because I sort of do double planning.
She has a spreadsheet. That's why.
No, it's actual like old school graph paper and a ruler and a pencil, mechanical pencil, by the way. None of this stop to sharpen something. That's bull crap.
Do you? Okay, that's a good question though. I rarely graph stuff out. If
Well,
I do it, it's on EQ8.
Yeah.
But I don't graph stuff out.
So I will design a quilt in EQ8, but when it comes down to cutting, particularly if it's pre-cuts, or I know I want this quilt to be pre-cut friendly, and I'm like, all right, in 10 inches by 10 inches for a layer cake, what can I actually cut out of that? Or when I'm looking at background, because the background, like if you have a background fabric in EQ8, it could be wildly over, and I've even had it under in some cases. Because the way it calculates fabric is it assumes... Like if you have a funky shape, like a half square triangle, it knows like, oh, you can get 2 pieces out of like 1 square. It's got that down. But when you get into like
quarter square triangles
or quarter square triangles, it's like, what? And so what I end up doing is on a piece of graph paper, and it's like big old honking 11 by 17 graph paper in the United States. I don't know what the equivalent is outside the U.S. And it's 1/4-inch graph paper. And because I used to be an architecture major.
She's so excited about it.
I have this architect scale, which is like this crazy 6-sided scale thing where it's like, oh, 1/4 inch equals 1 inch, or 3/32 equals 1 foot. Or so I get out my little architect scale, and then I'm like, all right, here's my width of fabric.
Not even close.
And then I'm like, I know I need, I don't know, 72 3.5-inch squares, and I can get that out of 3 strips of 3.5 inches. I'm like, all right, well, that's now 10.5, 11 inches of fabric I need for that. So then I add up by section. I'm like, I know I need 11 inches plus 18 inches plus 32 inches plus, and then I'm like, okay, and divide that by 36 to tell me how many yards. And then I have to add extra because I know not everyone cuts, including me, properly on the first go. Like, oh, I'm gonna need some extra just in case.
I can't even tell you how lost I am. I do not. This is why one of our challenges that we're doing with each other is we have to design a quilt with, pre-cuts or whatever.
Fabric
I
limitations.
struggle because
I need more fabric. No, you don't.
I'm like, we need more fabric. So we've already had this discussion of.
I was like,
because I don't design like that. I'm not even close to designing like that.
And that's perfectly cool.
It totally is perfectly cool, and that's why we were.
I mean, it's kind of weird, but it's fine.
Totally right.
It's not right.
But borders I approach the same way. Like I look at it and go, I want a blue border. I want a skinny one. I want something pieced. I love checkerboards and piano keys. Like I do a lot more piece borders than she does.
Oh yeah, I ain't got time for that.
I love a good piece border. I do.
Ooh, I have a question.
And I love stripes. I use a lot of stripes.
Do you have any tips?
On
when
yes, I have lots of tips.
Particular to this thing I'm going to bring up. When you're adding a border, and it's like a super skinny, like it's going to finish at 1 inch. Mm-hmm. Got any tips for how to make it not be wavy? Because when it's that skinny and it's like a very strong contrast to what's around it, it is incredibly obvious if it's like wibbly wobbly at all, or like
glue it. Yeah.
Before you sew it, after you sew it.
Before you sew it. You've not done that?
I don't do that.
So you can take.
I don't pin. I ain't got time for that.
Yeah. Pinning would be another choice. But if you really, and they talk about this doing binding too. If you really want something straight and it to be, glue it, and you use Elmer's washable school glue, the white kind, and feed a bead down and press it in and iron it. It will hold it.
Heat set
it. Sew it. It's not going to move because you've glued it down.
Okay.
And then that would hold it for you.
Okay.
I can't say that I do that very often.
And so then when you press it, you're laying it so the border is on top and you're flipping it? Like, are you pressing to that skinny border?
After I've sewn or before I've sewn? Before I've sewn,
why would you press it before you sew it? Like, other than heat setting. This is after you sew it.
Set it.
And you are now pressing it so you can add the next piece.
Oh. Let me think about that. I would press it and then, and
flip it over.
And flip it over and press,
okay.
Yeah. Yeah, that's how I would do it.
Hey, when you're piecing borders.
Yes.
This is what I do. When I have like a pieced center and I'm adding a border, I will, usually if it's kind of long, I will throw it a bone, put like 3 pins in it, like a middle, Like match the centers, pin that, and then pin the start and the end.
If you do not want wavy borders, pinning is your friend. And how do you measure a border?
That's cute. Let me get
No,
through my
you do not just sew it on, do you?
No, I don't do that.
Oh, smart.
No, so typically what I do is cut it to what the design instructions say. Like, all right, the center should be 64 inches
We hope.
and a half, because seam allowance. And I cut it 64 and a half inches. By golly. Now, I know, like, if it's a lot of pieces, there can be some shrinkage or some expansion depending on how your quarter inch is.
Yes. And how you iron.
And how you press.
Oh, my gosh,
Not
yes.
iron, press.
Press, you're right, pressing. No, because I've seen people press and lose half an inch because they don't know how to press.
Yes.
Yes.
And so you're supposed to measure from 2 spots in the center, not the edge, because the edge could be stretchy. I mean, honestly, the middle could be stretchy too. But from the center part of the middle that you're piecing
Well, the instructional books will tell you measure the top, you measure the center, you measure the bottom, and then you do an average.
Yeah.
I have to admit, 9 times out of 10, you're going with the center number. So
yeah. But I will say, when I do pin and then I sew, I put it so the more pieced element is on top.
Yes. No.
Or you do the border on bottom all the time, even if it's pieced.
Which one's longer?
Typically, I find my long border piece
is
going to be longer than my center, and I put that on the bottom because the feed dogs help pull that through.
That's what's going to be my answer. It's okay. So anytime I'm sewing, and I know this is a little bit longer than of the 2 pieces, one's a little bit longer. I put the longer one on bottom.
Yes,
because my feed dogs just they
do you a solid.
They do you a solid, and you can pull on that top piece just a hair so that it gets in there and pulls it through, and it doesn't look like it's taken up,
crinkly.
Stuff.
Yeah.
And you can do that. You can give yourself half an inch sometimes, easy.
Mm-hmm.
It depends on how pieced the one border is, or how pieced one side of it is.
Yep.
You totally can.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah. We can totally do that. Anyway. So, yes. But I normally, I like piece. Oh, another thing about borders, if you're doing a piece border, I always, of course, I'm doing it on long arm, but I always run a stitching line along the edges to just solidify it.
Oh, Krista Watson calls that the victory lap.
Yeah.
Where you do like 1/8 of an inch from the edge.
But I will sometimes do that prior to even putting it on the long arm to be quilted.
Well, yeah, of course. Because otherwise, if you don't backstitch, your seams can just pull apart. Goodbye.
Like, go, hey, we didn't want to be there. Bye.
Busting out.
Freedom! So, yes, I do that. So, stitch victory lap. I didn't heard Krista say that, but that's good.
Yeah, she's got it in her book. Multiple books, I think.
Oh. I looked at all of her books.
They're very pretty pictures.
They have very pretty pictures.
I just made a change
read a lot of quilt books
in my studio.
I have a lot of quilt books. I don't read them. I look at all the pictures. Look at that.
I changed my studio a little bit. I don't have a lot of books to begin with, just because that's how I roll.
Because she comes to my house and gets them from here.
Take your book.
You borrow them.
When's the last time I borrowed a book?
I don't remember.
Yeah, because it was like 4 years ago. But I took all the ones with like free motion quilting designs and put them next to my Sweet 16s because I've been working on a clamshell quilt with no borders, by the way. And I'm just like flipping through like need a design. Okay, put it back, sit down, do clamshell.
I did that with Leah Day's book and a quilt that I did. So cool. Anyway, anything else about borders?
I think we're
you should
at the border of insanity with this topic.
I feel surrounded. Now we're going to take a closer look at Mike's guitar quilt, and we will be right back. Okay, we're back, and we are going to talk about embellishments. This is not my topic. I think a viewer suggested this.
A viewer did suggest this.
Okay, so...
but you have done more than I have.
I have done probably a little bit more than you have.
Because as I frequently say to guild members when they're planning workshops, like, I don't need another class about glue and crap on a quilt.
I don't glue.
And I think that's the nature of the quilts that I make.
That's true. Mine get hung up, and yours get slept under.
Mine get turned into forts.
Yes, and there are a lot of my quilts that are not fort worthy. They're not fort worthy.
They are not, nor should they be.
Yes.
And mine that are not fort worthy are all like super tiny and would be like an ant fort at most. They're not that big.
Mine are so stiff, like you don't want.
You could make a house of cards out of them.
There you go. That could be an option. So do you add embellishments to your quilts? She's thinking awful long and hard about this. Twice. I don't think she does.
No, when I do, they're like smallish, purposeful art quilts. But in general, I don't do a lot of wall hangings that require or would be enhanced by embellishments. I've thought about like, oh, I'd love to bedazzle that up, but I haven't actually done that.
And that's a big trend.
So mine's like a button or two, or, I did an applique, a Nancy Halverson Christmas applique quilt, and it came with like the whole kit of buttons, and they're like specialty buttons that look like bells and that kind of stuff.
Well, Christmas is a good time for collecting embellishments because people wrap presents with good ribbon. Not
my people.
Ooh.
My people don't put ribbon on presents because my people all have cats, and cats eat ribbon, and then that's a trip to the emergency vet.
Oh, no. So, yeah. I get ribbon on quilts, and I save every piece of ribbon that gets brought to me so that I will, can then, especially if it's good grow grain?
Yeah.
I want to say gross grain.
Because there's an S in there, but it's silent.
Okay. Grow grain quilts are ribbon. I like good grow grain ribbon. So ribbons, I collect a lot of ribbons.
Get out of here with
yarn. Did you just throw it?
I did just throw it.
Seriously. Did you do it at Ellen Burns?
Eleanor Burns? Absolutely, I did. I'm not going to throw this. It might hit something important.
Yes, exactly. So, interesting. There's a great little farmer's market close to us. And they have this lady who grows her own. That's wrong.
She planted the sheep seeds.
She has a farm where she has sheep. This is not going to go well. The rest of it's going to be off. She has a farm where she has sheep, and she makes her own yarn and spins and cards the wool. She cards the wool, and she shears the sheep, cards the wool, and spins her own yarn. And this is some of the yarn that she made, and I love it. And I use it as embellishments in some art quilts.
And postcards, too, I think.
And postcards, yeah. It's one of my favorite ribbon. Yeah, don't throw.
I'm not chucking that one.
Okay.
Yeah, get that out of here.
Get that out of here. Buttons are always a good choice for embellishments.
My buttons are all in like one big tab. Okay, so.
Mine are pretty buttons. And these are your favorite color.
I need inspiration.
Out here.
I need inspiration.
I
have a ton of like random brass/gold buttons. Some are from various military dress uniforms that I have inherited. Some are from some fashionable 90s clothing choices and like the spare button they give you. Like,
you don't want to put that on your Prince quilt?
Some are from Grandma Eddie's collection that I inherited. Some are from my Aunt Darylyn's collection. And so I have like all these brass buttons. I should do something with it. And I was listening to Leah Day's podcast, and what she did was take a whole bunch of buttons and put them in the shape of a Christmas tree.
Oh, that's
and I think
cute.
she got sidetracked because she wanted to then put grout on, and that ended up not looking good. I'm like, oh, I could stitch all these buttons to something.
Yeah, to me, that's a great pillow for a, decorative pillow for a couch during Christmas or something.
Okay, the pillows in my house don't stay on the couch. They inevitably get thrown.
Mine don't
at
either
other
because
people.
I have dogs that just kick them off the couch and look at me like I didn't like it there.
Well, my human kids do that. The dog does that.
That drives me nuts.
Yeah.
So
anyway. I'm kind of anti-pillow, although I know I need new pillow covers.
I love pillows.
But then we actually use them to like lay on, and that's not comfortable to have just like all buttons It's like a torture
That's why
device.
I said decorative. That would be the key part.
That's
of
the
it.
key thing. I don't have decorative pillows.
So, yo-yos. Do you use yo-yos? With buttons
I have
on
a yo-yo
them?
maker. There's like dog hair stuck to that one. It was distracting.
Sorry. Josie, I'm sure, has gone through this. I knew it was going to
Be
go
wary
bad.
of placement of embellishments on your garments, ladies. So I have a yo-yo maker. At one point, I was
Really?
very excited about, making a whole yo-yo quilt, which is not actually a quilt. It's just yo-yos.
It's a coverlet, really.
Yeah.
But
like it's a bed
praised
runner.
some of those.
Yeah.
Those were very popular.
Which I think looks cool. And then I think I made 5 yo-yos and was like, well, no, thank you. Also, the cat's just going to get tangled up in this with its tiny little paws and freak out. And now it's a cape.
I have no idea why I made all these, but apparently
Oh, no.
I made a bunch of these red ones. I don't know why I need a bunch of red yo-yos.
So you can make it rain?
Make it rain up in here.
Some sweet yo-yo action. Welcome to the stitch. So she showed me this bag of yo-yos, and I was like, well, first, I thought they were tiny hexagons, and I really thought she was crazy because we had just talked about English paper piecing and how she hates it.
No, they're yo-yos.
Yeah. So they're tiny. How big are they? Half-inch finish?
Yeah, half-inch finished.
Why? Why do you need those? What are you doing with them?
You know, okay, so
Are they berries? Ooh, this could be a good alternative
that's
for
what
berries.
okay. Berries.
So I specifically am encouraging at least one of my kids to be a biologist so they can engineer a non-round berry, like a berry with corners. Because when I applique stupid berries, they never come out with true circles. I'm like, I need a legit real-life berry that I could
justify your
Yes.
non-round corners on your quilt.
Yes. It's a master plan. I play the long game.
Yes, it is a total long game.
So
here.
far, I got no takers on that.
The FDA is going to be involved. It'll be a huge deal.
Well, you know, they grow watermelons in forcefully in a cube shape now. So
well, they have weird
packing.
shaped grapes. Grapes aren't round. Think about it. Grapes are not round. A lot of the green grapes are
But they don't have
oblong.
corners.
Well,
I need some corners.
okay,
I need
if
some
we
points.
if
I cut my
you could
points up
just
on my
curve,
blocks.
like if you could make oblong shapes, you'd be better off than the corners.
I still need
Okay,
some
we're talking
corners.
about embellishing. Back to embellishing.
Yes.
So
Pointy berries, yes. Rick-rack.
there's a place for rickrack.
I do love a jumbo. I do love a jumbo chenille rickrack on a baby quilt.
Just not jumbo rickrack, jumbo chenille.
Oh, because it's so soft.
True.
And
it is.
the fun thing about that is what you do is you stitch it on top of the seam that you jacked up where your points don't match, and then it hides it.
Well, that's why you use embellishments, is because you can put these on points that don't match.
Mhm.
Just saying.
Now, do you add those before or after
These
quilting?
after quilting.
Of course, yes. Because you don't want to bust a needle on a button when you're quilting.
No. After quilting. And these can hide a bunch of stuff. Just saying.
Let me see.
Her suggestion.
So, like when you have a spot, and you just be like, yes.
It's like cover up for your quilt.
Yes.
It hides
It
those.
doesn't even have to be that weird skin tone that's no one's actual skin color.
That's right. Exactly.
It's a design.
It's a design choice. That's our favorite. It's a design choice.
So on the guitar quilt,
On the guitar quilt, which is really
I see some
interesting.
couching. Is that couching?
Yes, it is couching.
Tell the nice people what couching is for those that don't know. It's not sitting on the couch and thinking about quilts.
It is really.
Well,
It's where you take a yarn or it could be anything, but I'm going to have this on my sewing machine and then I'm going to use a zigzag stitch to go over
That's what it sounds like.
to go over the what I'm couching down.
Yeah, yarn, ribbon.
Yarn, ribbon, whatever.
Yeah.
So it's a zigzag stitch that couches stuff down. And it's very easy to use, or
It
very
is.
easy to do.
Now,
I
there
do a
are
lot
some
of
long
couching.
arms that will apply that.
You can do it on a long arm, but you have to, oh, when it's on the long arm, they have a foot. This isn't the best ribbon to use or yarn to use. They have a foot that you would feed through.
It's got like a little
It's got a
pumpy
hole,
thing.
and it feeds through like this. And the needle's here, and it actually pierces the yarn or whatever you're putting through it down the center. So it doesn't do a zigzag on it, and that allows you to couch. And what the key to that is a thicker yarn or ribbon or something to use. This one wouldn't work well because there's some real thin aspects to it. So just the nature
it
of
would
what
miss
this
some of it.
yarn is. Yeah. So, and you can actually do a zigzag and couch on a long arm. It's just slow because you'll do stitch, 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 stitch. And you can go that slow.
Yeah.
I don't have time for that, but you can go that slow. I'm not doing that at all, ever. Like, I outrun my stitch regulator a lot of times because I stitch, and then my yarn or my thread gets broken because I go too fast. And there's certain threads I don't like to use because they don't like how I quilt.
So,
but what I thought was cool about this is she used these buttons. I don't think you can see this part, but we'll get a close up of it. But she used buttons that look like the frets and the keys at the top. I mean, those are actual guitar, keys that go on the
thingy with the
Tuning key.
the tuning keys. I'm getting.
We're good at music ball.
Yeah. Yes. Like, we're doing really well. We have two musicians
played a
in
flag.
the studio, and they are giving us dirty looks.
Horrified.
They're horrified. But she couched the frets down and did the tuning keys, and she has the wire.
Strings?
It's really,
I think they're guitar strings. Is that
they're
right?
not the real guitar strings.
Well, no. They look
but
like
they
metallic
look
thread.
like the wire that you would use for guitar strings. So, but it's definitely, that is where I think embellishment is extremely successful. And I've seen some embellished quilts that I went, It's their design
Someone
choice.
is just super in love with hot fix crystals.
There are some that have hot fix crystals that are
gorgeous.
stunning.
Yes.
And then it's the saying of, there's folk art and there's just folk. And sometimes it's just folk. Just saying. But these people, they put their heart into it, and I just, I like it. I think embellishments could be extremely successful. They can add to the quilt. They can add interest to the quilt. When you're just embellishing because you got a bunch of gold buttons, I don't know. When you said that, you know what I was thinking of? I was thinking of our Prince challenge, and I'm thinking, oh great, her Prince is gonna have all kinds of gold buttons on them.
No, I don't. I'm allowed to, we can add embellishments to that, but I don't know. But there's like a limit of it can't be more than X% of surface area. Or was that alternate colors besides purple?
It was alternate colors besides purple. But I do want to say this too. When you do add embellishments and you're putting something in a show, please read the rules of that show, because some shows don't allow
Three-dimensional
objects to be a certain width off the surface of the quilt. So like it'll say a half an inch, can't be more than a half an inch off the surface of the quilt or something like that. Also, if your quilt, make sure you nail that embellishment down really well so that it can be folded and unfolded and folded and unfolded and folded and unfolded and hung up and then folded and unfolded. Because how many times they do that is crazy. And they're not going to do it like you do it.
They're going to do it
fast and, I mean, especially if it's judged and all that kind of stuff. So just look at that when shipping your quilts and all that kind of stuff. And then I think it's a good point where you said, don't embellish crystals on a quilt and give it to a baby. That's not going to go well in the crib. I'm just thinking,
Well,
hot
and
pick crystals.
you know, a decent
Babies don't
guideline.
care, but they would not like their skin all
Well,
messed
and they
up.
don't want to, and a lot of that too, particularly for youth quilts, is about choking hazards. And there are
Right,
legit rules about like
yeah.
nothing smaller than, I used to have these sizes memorized, like is allowed to be attached to anything for kids because it's a choking hazard.
Yeah, I wouldn't.
Like Matchbox cars, not good for under 3, because maybe by 3 they learn not to eat them.
We're hoping.
I've seen some 3-year-olds that hadn't learned that yet.
But it's like just in even these yo-yos that are innocuous, but I wouldn't put that on a kid's quilt,
Yeah.
especially with the button on it
If it's a wall hanging for their nursery, cool, but don't hang it
Different.
above their quilt, above their crib, sorry.
that they're going to pull down. Yeah, exactly. So, and I think some of that's just common sense, but
One would think.
pro
But yet we
tip.
have rules that tell people don't eat Tide Pods.
That's true. That is a new weird thing. I did see someone come out with a meme the other day. Hey kids, here's the new Tide Pod challenge. Laundry.
Yeah.
Like, that's really good. I need that Tide Pod challenge. Laundry. I don't like laundry.
Okay, well, all right. Do you consider contrast thread and quilting to be an embellishment, or is that just quilting?
Well, considering I have a quilt that is essentially all contrast thread to
painted.
make and thread painted, yeah, I guess it would. I mean, because without that, there is no design on that quilt. It's a
piece
whole
of
cloth
fabric.
quilt. Yeah. And I've done a couple of those that I think definitely add to it. And when you look at metallic threads and some of the new sparkle kind of threads that they've got and, you know, different couching, some of those threads, yeah, I mean, yes, those are embellishments, yes. And how they're used, yeah, I would say, yeah. I probably embellish my quilts more than I think now that we're talking about this. I didn't realize. I just make stuff. Now, do I consider paint an embellishment?
Yes.
And I paint stuff.
Well, so I'm not as good at painting, but I do have the watercolor pencils.
Yeah, those are
And
embellishment.
then do that. And then what I usually don't put the water on it to make it disperse. I usually go in with some aloe to deepen that color.
Yes, I do too. I like how they are. Because I've laid it down the way I wanted it to with the watercolor pencils. And what we're talking about is Derwent ink tints pencils. And we'll put a link about those in the show notes. They're really good.
Yeah, and
They're
I think
excellent.
I just have like a 12-pack with some basics, but you can blend them together and do some things.
I actually got a set for Christmas one year. There were some of my favorite things. I do like those. But I use paint, like I've painted on quilts, used the ink tints pencils. I'm trying to think of what else I've used. This is one of the more interesting things. What?
Shiva paint sticks, the oil-based.
Yeah,
I've used
Shiva
those
paints.
because I'm just not as confident with a brush. Something I can actually control, like a pencil, I'm good with.
So brushes now. Yeah. I guess, and then markers. I mean, markers are embellishment.
Oh, to cover up my quilting stitches? Like, let me just color that one in so you won't see it.
That's not an embellishment. Well, I guess it's the cover-up thing.
It's the secret embellishment.
We're back to cover-up.
Maybe no one will notice this.
Yes. No one will notice this yo-yo right here on this corner.
That's what I get for using white thread on black fabric.
I have, honest to God, seen a certified judge take seams apart and look at them during judging and saying they used white thread in this one and this one didn't. This one gets the ribbon. I saw her do it. I went, wow. So
I'm not hiring her for any of my shows, by the way.
That's how, but the both quilts were of equal, gorgeous, talented, points, good. And that was the deciding factor. Pulling those seams apart and looking at the threads, what they pieced it with. So I was like, wow, that's the separation right there. What did you piece with? Your points are great, but what did you piece with? So anyway, anything else about embellishments? I don't use a lot of crystals. That's probably the one
I'm
thing
drawn
I don't.
to them, but I do not have confidence in my ability to
And they're
apply them
expensive.
appropriately.
Well, and they're expensive too. They're not inexpensive.
Bling it up, like my inner 6-year-old's going to come out and just go banana.
Yeah. Rainbows and unicorns. It'll all be Lisa Frank, right?
Yes. Oh,
There you go.
very pleased. So my daughter's birthday was yesterday and had a sleepover. And one of the girls showed up in a Lisa Frank t-shirt. And I'm like, I see you. You're my people.
If you don't know who Lisa Frank is, we're sorry.
Go now.
Go now. Look it up.
Alrighty. So, can you leave well enough alone, or do you need to add bling on your quilts? Let us know. Leave a comment on the blog or on the YouTube episode. And that's all we have for this episode. Today's show is made possible by QT Fabrics. Learn more about them and their fun fabrics at qtfabrics.com.
We'd like to thank 77 Peaches, Big Think Productions, for helping produce The Stitch. And if you've enjoyed the show, please like, share, and subscribe.
Our next virtual stitch-in is Friday, February 9th at 7 p.m. U.S. Eastern, broadcast live on our YouTube channel. And my podcast, Hip to Be a Square, is out Fridays or Saturdays lately on iTunes or Google Play.
All those details and more can be found at our website, thestitchtvshow.com. Tune in next time for more quilting chat with friends.